Welcome to the EF Alumni Panel, which will also be fondly known as the highlight of your day by the end of the day. I wanted to start with a little memory test. Does anyone remember the photo that Dan just showed us of the man who had just thrown himself out of a plane without a parachute? Yeah? So a little known fact about these four is that they have all done that. And they are hurtling towards the ground at a terrifying speed. And I guess that's why you wanted to get them to come in and talk to you today. So they have all done EF. Rashid was in EF 2013, the very first cohort. Hugh was with me in EF 2014, high five. And Alessis and Maria have just started. So they've been on the full-time program for 3 weeks now. The main reason why we chose these people is because they're all hugely interesting and have great stories to tell, but also they have backgrounds that are very relatable to you guys. We really wanted to get them up here to explain why the hell they jumped and what that journey has actually been like for them. The way this is going to work is I'm going to let all of these wonderful people introduce themselves a little bit more. Then we're going to have a 20-minute kind of facilitated discussion about their time hurtling through space, not space, the atmosphere. Got that slightly wrong. Alice mentioned that a lot of you might not actually know exactly what EF is and how it works, so that might be a helpful place to start. So what EF does is it takes the best individuals purely on technical talent. That's pre-team and pre-startup idea. It puts them all together in a 6-month program, and we help them build massive companies at the end. So these people are all either on that journey now or have already done that, and we hope that we can inspire you that it's something amazing to do with your lives. So without further ado, Hugh, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Does this just work? Oh, amazing. Hi, I'm Hugh. I founded Cofounders with Ross, who's the pretty blonde at the back. So I joined EF just like what Jade said. I really wanted to do something, for myself. I really wanted to work for myself. I really wanted to take ideas that I had at uni forward. And sort of getting a normal job for me just seemed to be a little bit dull. I know a lot of people at uni who had sort of taken software jobs and maybe after a couple of years they kind of got bored with them and would leave and just try and do something a bit more interesting. And I thought, well, do I really need to do that 2-year fine? Why don't I just try something straight out of uni? And so what we came up with was a game that teaches kids how to program. Now, what we've been hearing from other people today is that there's a big problem with people being conservative in the UK. There's a big problem with people just not really getting on with it and doing it. And a lot of that, we feel, is this fear of actually getting down, getting your laptop out, trying some coding. There are probably quite a lot of people here who haven't done that much coding before, and it can be a daunting task just trying to pick up a new language, pick up something you're not really familiar with. And the government realised this, and they've now made computing compulsory in all primary schools in the UK, which is absolutely fantastic. But the teachers don't have anything to teach it with. A lot of the products out there for teachers are kind of designed by adults for adults, and they kind of forget that kids actually just want to enjoy learning and enjoy learning by creating. So what we do is we make a game that allows kids to just be completely creative. They can design a world, and then they use code to actually code the animals in that world. And that's the product we make, very simply. I think we'll probably go over things a bit more in more detail later on. So do you want to have a go?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Hey guys, I am Maria. I did go to a corporate world for 10 months, and I did find it dull, like you said. So I quit and I came to EF. My interests are in machine learning, and right now I'm looking into recommendation systems and how it can help maybe companies not lose their customers.
And you worked with Telefonica in your master's degree too?
Yeah, in my master's thesis I worked at Telefonica doing some recommendation systems, and then I went to pharma. And then, I came here.
Great.
Cool. I've got one. Hi. So I'm Rashid. I was with the first EF cohort. I am co-founder and CTO of Adbrain. My background is in computer science, electrical engineering, and then went on to do mathematics for my PhD. At the time, I was doing research in topology, which is quite interesting because it's the study of shapes. And as it turns out, by looking at the shape of data and what is preserved when you change those shapes, you can do really interesting things, which led on to my discovery of an algorithm which could do really cool things with data. My original plan was to exploit this algorithm and to do it in London. But pretty early on, I decided I'm going to shelve this. I'm going to go for something with a quicker monetization path. And that was how I ended up founding Adbrain, which uses artificial intelligence to drive better sales of advertising on mobile and in desktop and in general marketing tools, CRM, etc. So it's very interesting, but since then a lot has happened. EF was hugely helpful, and here I am.
Can you describe briefly for the audience why Adbrain is so cool from a technical point of view?
Yeah, so we use a lot of programming languages, which I think very few companies would use. We have been in pitches with some really big companies, for example, in San Francisco, and they've looked at our tech and they've said, this is some of the most exciting tech we've ever seen. So without going into details, we're seeing a lot of validation from people who are experts in the area of data mining and analysis, who are telling us that what we're doing is very exciting, which is good. But at the same time, it's about thinking very abstractly about the landscape, and rather than innovating on the next big thing, what we came up with was the brain, basically, in advertising. And that requires a lot of infrastructure. That requires a lot of algorithms. It requires interfaces. So it's a very complex tech stack. So we've had to grow to quite a large engineering team. We are 25, though we got funded just last May, which is pretty big, I think, for most startups in terms of growth curve.
It's 9 million in total, right?
9 million in total raised.
Which is amazing.
The reason for that was because we are using 5 programming languages on a daily basis to build our actual technology, and lots of frameworks. So this means you've got to have a lot of heads, you've got to have a lot of specialized niche technical people working on it.
Great, thank you. Alessis?
Hi. So like most people here, I dreaded going into getting a normal job. That's why I guess I stayed in academia for a while. So I did my undergrad back in Lithuania, where I'm from. And then I came to do a master's in machine learning in the University of Edinburgh. Continued straight on to starting a PhD, and because that presented me an opportunity to do on something I liked, something I wanted to work on. But then EF came along and presented me a better opportunity. So I decided to just drop my PhD and come join EF. Me and my co-founder started working on recommendations, but very quickly we found out that might not have been a best idea, and changed the idea slightly. So now we're doing biometrics, and we're doing essentially electrocardiogram, which is your heart signal-based authentication.
Great. I think you kind of touched on it, but I'd like to get you to talk about where your ideas came from. First of all, do you think there's ever such thing as a perfect idea? Do you think you need to start a company with a perfect idea? I don't know who.
Yeah, I think I could jump in on that one, because what we started out building was a mobile ad tech platform. And this was my co-founder Garrett's idea, because he had worked in ad tech for a while for Google and so on. We're not that anymore. We do have that as part of our stack, but 2 years ago, a mobile ad tech platform was new. Nobody had really done it in the way we were going to do it as a pure tech play. But today, we are much more the intelligence platform behind data. And it really takes playing with the platform to actually see how we are different from other analytics tools. But we are much more general. We are focused on ad tech for the moment, but we have applications outside ad tech. And that took at least a year to evolve. So I don't think it's important to have the perfect idea.
Okay. And I think it's fair to say that your idea came from a problem that was very difficult to solve technically, but one that, if it was solved, would have a great market opportunity. That's very much in contrast to Hugh. His idea, he can tell you a little bit more about where it came from, but his was much more of kind of obsession-based idea. And that's the kind of two areas we see people using to come up with ideas. One is very problem-led, and one is obsession-led. So Hugh, if you could talk about obsession-led.
Yeah, so from pretty young age, I really like making games. Games to me are awesome. They're a kind of escapism, but they're also a way of learning. They're a way of relaxing and collaborating with people. And I've been sort of all the way through school, all the way through uni, I was completely obsessed with writing games, which is kind of interesting because I didn't actually ever do any computing courses at school. I kind of learned to program myself, kind of on the internet, trying out the odd thing. And through uni, I just sort of became more obsessed with this idea of like having a programming game, because I found it, quite hard to learn to program. It was pretty difficult for myself. And I've got an 11-year-old brother now who was also trying to learn to program, and he wasn't getting very far either. Like, I'd sit him down with Java, and I was like, right, today you're going to learn how to zip files using like File.io or something. And he was like, no. So I wanted to find something that would actually be a lot more fun, and I just got completely obsessed with the idea of making a game that teaches programming. That said, like, it's not, you can have an obsession for a vision, but that's not really what a business is about. Like, you've got to be completely two-faced about it, On an outward side, to investors, to other people, like, you have the dream, you've got this thing and you're going to build it. But on the inside, like, that what you're building and what you want is not there yet. You need to know, it's a science. You need to know that what you're building is actually relevant to people. So what we spend a lot of time doing is we go out to schools and we try the game with kids and to see what they think. And for the first 4 or 5 months, they were pretty bored. Like, I'm not going to lie, we're going to investor meetings and we're being like, this is amazing, this is wonderful. And we had this glorious discovery. Like, we went to one school and one of the levels had broken, so we needed to like get up the level editor and fix it. And the kids were just like, oh, cool, what's that? And we were like, well, that's what we use to make levels. And they were like, oh, can we use it? Can we use it? And I was like, well, yeah, I guess if we go to this page, you guys can try it out. And then like suddenly there was this change in the classroom when like everyone started really enjoying it, and they were like, oh, it's wicked, man, like, it's really cool. And we're there just like, okay, like this is good, yeah. And you have these like, a lot of it is gut instinct. You have these little epiphanies where it's like, oh, okay. And you've got to be prepared, okay, I'm going to completely change the way we do our business now. Let's just like make it a level editor. So effectively now, the game's gone for something that's quite traditional. It was kind of level based, and it's about building. It's all about building and learning to code through building. So I think the point is, you're always learning, and you can't just have the perfect product to start with.
I think it's also worth mentioning here that Hugh's obsession is now a funded obsession, which is great. So if there's something that you've always just been like niggling to build, then like you should just absolutely go for it. And Alessis, how did you go from recommendation systems to bioauthentication stuff?
Yeah. So as we were working on the recommendation stuff, it wasn't going that well. And one day, my co-founder just apparently failed to enter his password one too many times. Just came into my room and said, that's it, I can't take passwords anymore. We have to do something about it. And we looked through what is available out there, and we thought that there are still a lot of flaws in bioauthentication. So we found another method to do it that seems relatively unexplored, and decided to take it from there.
Cool. And then I guess once you have the idea, the next big thing is recruiting people around the idea. So we always think like, one of the most important tests for your startup is, can you actually get a co-founder? Because if you can't convince someone who is really great and you deem worthy of being a co-founder to come and join you, then that's probably like quite a fatal flaw. So I was wondering, you guys, how you thought the process was about getting co-founders, where they came from, if that was important to you. I know, Alessis, you were friends with Andres before. Do you want to talk about that for a while?
Yeah, I've been friends with Andres for a long time. We actually met on a plane to Edinburgh the first time I was coming to UK. And yeah, we've...
So get on lots of planes and talk to everyone else. Bump them, in fact, or whatever it is, Blendology
So we've been friends pretty much since, and we decided that we don't want to do regular jobs. And we were actually, even before EF, we were trying to build something and seeing how it goes. EF just presented us a better opportunity to do it. So we decided to both apply here.
And Rashid, you had a kind of different story to that.
Yeah, it was a bit convoluted. So one of my co-founders I met at university, and we got along well, so I figured, and he was quite interested in machine learning at the time, and the problem I was originally working on was it was the implementation of the discovery algorithm I was talking about earlier. So he and I started working on it. Then on EF, I met my other co-founder, who happened to be really into building solid infrastructure, and he was a good coder, and he was very much traditional software engineer, and he had a good handle of computer science, which is important to me, like the more theoretical stuff, which was quite important when you work in algorithms. Then we ended up changing ideas because we ended up shelving the discovery engine. So the other co-founder was introduced to me through someone on EF, and he had been in industry, and he knew the ad tech sector really well. And this looked like a really exciting area to exploit from a solid infrastructure algorithms perspective. So the team kind of came together bit by bit, and so we have 4 people when we were founding, which is kind of large, but that's what it was.
Great. And you're all working on very different things, or will be working on very different things. And most of you weren't kind of domain experts when you started. Like Hugh started just out of university, and the others of you hadn't been working for that long. How do you get your first users? How do you get people to talk to? How do you basically, we always tell you to act like a honey badger, but like, what does that look like in reality? Maria is like well known on the cohort for being absolutely amazing at getting anyone to talk to her. So do you want to just talk about that challenge?
Well, I was trying to find out if companies wanted a tool I was working on, and I just sent cold emails. I didn't even know the guys. I was just starting contacting all the CTOs of companies that were in my targeted audience, and I spent some time writing the email to have an attractive title that could actually make them open the email, and then I tried to keep the email precise and short, and then they started replying. So yeah, I sent 40 emails. I got a reply from 10, which is a good conversion rate, I think. I got 10 meetings, so some of them showed interest to have further collaboration, so it worked out well.
Maria actually managed to get a meeting with the CTO of Rackspace after 1 email. So if you want cold email tips, you should definitely talk to her. And Hugh, I know your customer segment is different from a lot of people's in that they're kids. Do you want to talk a bit about how you infiltrated that market in a non-creepy way?
Well, you say that, but it is actually quite difficult. You need to enter a relationship with a school, for example, or it's very hard to actually get in without all the checks that you need and all the checks you require. And the first way I found was you've got to be very hustly. You've got to kind of find ways in. You know people who might be teachers. So you're like, oh, maybe your school could like host one of our events. We started off actually with a code club, so it's sort of another coding platform, I guess, where they link up volunteers to go teach in schools and teach curriculums. So we sort of got some of those just by emailing around, and it turns out that primary school teachers just love trying everything. One of the things they always say in startups is you really got to be solving a problem. And like for us, like the problem really lies with the teachers. They're really scared because they need to teach something they've never taught before. So we turned up at the schools. We had the curriculum we were supposed to teach. We threw that in the bin and got out our game and was just like, this is really educational and stuff. And obviously it was very early days then. Moving forwards, we had a lot of success just phoning up schools. Like it turns out that if you've got a customer who really needs something, they will try it. So usually the way to get it right is not to, if you're having a hard time getting your customers to try it, then maybe you're building the wrong thing. Like, you want to build something that people just intrinsically need and intrinsically want. And the moment you've got that, then someone will pay for it at some point in your pipeline.
And Rashid, I know your customers are, again, very different. Do you want to talk about that B2B process?
So our customers, it's interesting. When we started out, as we talked about briefly before, it was much less about getting customers to use the platform. It was much more about there's this huge problem and there's a lot of demand for it because it translates into savings and money and all of that in a very obvious way. So it was about building the tech. For us, it was about getting the story right and good storytelling, putting the right sort of buzz out there about us, being very secretive about what we were doing, but teasing and tantalizing them with the right sort of marketing, blog posts, PRs, and speaking to the right people and getting the right message across through our networks. We had a board member who was one of the first, he was the founder of one of the first ad networks in Europe in the late 90s. So he knew a lot of people, and we had a really good network. And like Gareth, my co-founder from the commercial side, he had been in ad tech, and we knew quite a few players that way who would help us get the story out with the right messaging. So we had a lot of inbound requests. We ended up having far more customers than we could conceivably service as we come out of like alpha and beta, because the tech needs to scale and it's real time. It's billions of requests per day. So it was much more about limiting that pipeline and making sure the story stayed intact and interesting and kept moving forward.
Which is definitely a good problem to have.
Yes, indeed. High quality problems. So, yes.
So all of you are at very different stages of your startup journey. But can you talk a bit about how it actually is to have a startup and be doing your own things every day and building a product from the ground up? Is it what you expected, or is it different? Hugh?
It's amazing. It's really fun. Like, you start the right way. The right reasons to start a startup is because you're really doing something you believe in and really doing something you want. Everything around that is hard work, but it's the good sort of hard work. It's kind of the hard work where, for example, yesterday I wrote some code and pushed a commit to Git at 7:30, and this morning I wrote some code and pushed a Git at 4:30. Like, the fact that you can kind of just be developing and writing code for like 20 hours and you just don't notice is amazing, and that's what you want. It's not, if it feels like a chore, then that's the wrong way to think about it. And I think that's what was wrong for me about other jobs is, I did internships at all these big companies, and you get to 4 or half 4 and you think, oh, how long before I can actually leave and go and work on a project I actually want to be doing? So that's how I felt. I've forgotten the question now, so just got a bit passionate there.
Comparing what you thought
the
startup thing would be to what it is in
so I mean,
reality.
the things that have been really nice have been building up a team. I think the hardest part was just getting people to believe in it to start with. I remember when I first joined EF, I kind of knew I wanted to do this idea, but I didn't really know how to explain to people that it was going to be awesome and work, and that took a while. It took a few months before I actually found Ross and happened to mention it to him that I thought it might be a nice idea. And that's probably the next hardest thing, is just finding someone or finding people who want to do it. And in our case, it was just like, oh right, oh you want to do that? Oh, that's really cool, because I've been working in schools and teaching programming. Like, this is completely the right thing to be doing. And you need to have people on board who just really believe in what you believe as well.
Cool. And
so I agree with the kind of the hard work part of it, since I haven't done the other side yet. But so sometimes you end up finding this little thing that you need to fix, and you're almost there, and then it's 12 p.m. the next day, and you finally fixed it, but your sleeping schedule's completely destroyed, but you're fine with it. So because of the kind of it's a mixture of freedom and the fact that you're always working. So as long as you feel the freedom while you're working.
I I wanted to say the same. It's the freedom. It's exciting. The picture with the skydiving is exactly how it feels like, even if we are just in the first month. But it feels like that you don't know where it's going to go, but it's so exciting that you're learning so many things. You are not only coding, but you have to do this customer development that takes so much time, but it's also so amazing that you learn, that you have more skills than that you thought, and that's great.
Cool.
So just to add to that, it was more fun in some ways last year when we were starting out, because it was precisely the way you guys described it. And
I thought you were comparing this year's EF to last year's
Oh,
EF.
no.
I was like, ooh, get a bit.
Well, I don't know what it's like this year.
Actually, we were the best cohort, and I'll tell you why.
I'm not sure that's true, but I have heard that from some unreliable sources. The reason it was more fun last year was it was about staying up really late at night, sometimes sleeping during the day, etc. But when you start having lots of employees, especially commercial, they need to keep regular hours, and you sometimes need to be there, during regular hours, and it takes some of the fun away because you suddenly have to start showing up really early and go do meetings, or you can't be awake at 7:30 in the morning, but. Those were fun times, and I still try to do a bit of that, but I don't always get the chance.
Great. Okay, and last question from me before we take questions from these guys is why London? I know Adbrain had an opportunity to go to the US. You decided to stay here. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so we had an accelerator in the US ask us to come over. I'm not going to name them, but we decided not to because we didn't see them adding value. I think what we got out of EF and given our investors and the network put us in a really strong position. And going to an accelerator in the US, giving them equity, going through a structured program wasn't what we needed at the time. We had raised our seed round. We knew where we were going. The US is very interesting. It's a huge market. And in fact, we have an office there now. We've had one for a while. And we might have a bigger presence in the US soon, but London is great for certain technologies and certain types of startups. I wouldn't say you could build the next big social network here. Well, maybe you can, but it's not quite been done the same way as in the US. But for a company like Adbrain, working in advertising, London is great. The other reason it's great is it's much more competitive if you're hiring in the US. Mm-hmm. Salaries are much higher. There's so many companies who can, give them really good packages. So that's another thing. Also, being close to, London is a nice small city with lots to offer. I think it's a lot harder in the US where it's spread out. You have New York, which is great for ad tech. Then you have San Francisco where the real valley stuff happens. So it's that closeness, the close-knit strength of London, really.
Great. And Maria, you're actually from Cyprus, but you've been to university in both Barcelona and Stockholm. So you've done a European tour. Can you tell us why London was the right choice for you?
Well, after my master's, I went to Switzerland as well.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So I was working there, and I came just because of EF. I didn't want to join just any accelerator. I wanted to join EF because of their... because they can take you without a team and without the final idea. My friends are not into startups. I wanted to make a startup, but I didn't know the people who also want to do one. So I could apply it just me without a team. And that was actually... And of course, there are also Cypriots who built startups in EF before. Mm-hmm. And actually from them I found about EF, and then I saw, all right, they can take you like you are. Just because of the skills. And that's how I applied and came here.
And Alessis, you're from Lithuania, right?
Yep.
Do you want to compare Lithuania and London, or?
There's
not
really much to compare.
So how's London been for you?
It's been great. It is like someone said, like you said, small. It is compared to our trip when we took the trip to even the Silicon Valley. Getting from one side, like one part to another, takes forever.
Ridiculous traffic jams. No one should ever go there.
While in London, everything is close. And also, like Maria said, I came here because of EF, because it presented the best opportunity at the time.
Great. Thank you so much for coming.